Welcome to Little Wintry Line and Washes. It's a lovely topic tonight, just a little kind of a wintry feel today. But some beautiful colours, serene and calm, or vibrant and colourful. Just go for whichever you fancy. Enjoy. Okay, so we've got some really beautiful little images for painting some little winter line and wash. And most of them feature snow. I think one of them's got a bit of frosty ground as opposed to snow on it. Um, so obviously they're all very different. So what we'd be thinking today about is all of the different kinds of colour that we find on these. The thing with it as well is though, we can adjust those colours to suit. So if you're mixing something up and you prefer to use that, then go in with that. Because for example, this one is really much more muted than say this one with the brightness coming through it. However, I'm going to add more brightness into this sky just because of the colours that I really like. So it's about adapting the colours and putting in the ones that that you really like, as well as kind of like, following the things you can see. So by all means, sometimes it makes really nice impact if you just use a few more brighter colours with watercolour. It doesn't have to be all really washy or all really bright. So even something like this that appears very bright, you can also soften down any of the areas if you prefer, or not. Again, you're the artist, so you can choose those colours. So what I am going to do is I'm going to start by just kind of popping in very well. If you're going to do it really lightly. Mine's going to be harder, a darker line, because obviously you're not going to see what I'm demonstrating if I do that. And all I'm doing is just getting in a little bit of information about where I'm going to put things nice and lightly. The reason I say lightly is obviously you can see, you'll be able to see under the watercolour. I'm just going to pop more or less where this line of trees is coming. I'm not putting any of this in the foreground yet because I'll end up kind of going over. So I won't be able to put this background in, you see, behind the tree. But what you could do, if it's too confusing not to, you can just put, for example, a little bit of where that tree stump, for example, might start, and you can always use just a halfway mark that way, or even that way if you wanted to. I think I've put less grids and things on very simple landscapes just because it's a bit easier, but that's kind of helpful, isn't it? Because you can see it's just below halfway, kind of coming down here. So if you wanted to do something like that, that's fine. But you can also get away with absolutely no marks when you're getting quite a loose landscaping. So the beauty of watercolors is you can work tightly and more precisely, or you can work very loosely and not draw any lines in at all and just kind of go with it, or anywhere in between. So you can use watercolor the way you want to. You can use it very thin with lots of water and add lots of water, or you can add more color. And a lot of that is just getting those proportions of how much to use is a complete learning curve. It really is. So it doesn't matter if you do this, and if you've not done any watercolor or much watercolor, and just have an explore and see how it all works. But pretty much it's the biggest thing about it is it's the complete opposite to the way we apply acrylics and pastels, because we're working light to dark. Because what we've got to be a little bit careful of is that we don't miss out, we don't go over the light areas, because watercolors are translucent, whereas acrylics paints are opaque and will cover. So we can put a light colour over any dark colour. We can't do that with watercolour because it will come through. So just because because the difference is acrylic is got plastic in it, it's opaque, whereas Watercolour has got different kinds of pigments in that are not. Now, obviously, the darker they are, they do have more pigment, tend to have more kind of pigment that covers. So what I'm doing here is I'm just popping in some of these sweeps that come across here, look, so that I've almost got, and what I'm doing is I'm almost just seeing where these kind of bands come in, and that's just for me. But again, you don't even need to do this if you prefer to just do it. Because what you'll notice when you start to do this on any of these is how many colours there are in snow. And that's one of the joys of doing a little snowy landscape, because it teaches us so much when we're observing of all the different kinds of shades. And particularly on your particular picture that you've chosen, you can look at where the light's coming from. You know, is it coming from behind somewhere? Is it coming in front or at the top? Now we know here, this is like it's hitting up here, down here, down here, down here. So there's something here. We're obviously getting some light coming in this way over there, but there's obviously something big blocking the light here. So, and then here, it's kind of lighting up the front, but not behind it. So we can see the light's not coming from the back there either. It's kind of coming across this side, isn't it? So, you know, it's lighting up bits, but obviously, so yeah, so I'm just getting in some of these lovely kind of areas. And I think I was talking about how when whichever picture you choose, you can see you know, which side the light is coming in. And I think we said coming in from this side on this one in front, and then the shadows being cast there, but there's obviously something blocking it here. So what we can start to look at when we're looking at this is, you know, how what different colours we get in there, with some real kind of warmth where it picks up, and then some really other interesting colours. Now, if it feels easier to just pop a little bit of detail in, and I'm going to end up painting over this, but that's fine. If you want to just pop it in so that you can work out where this kind of hedge is coming, this fence, sorry, not hedge, then by all means pop that in. And if you're not sure, just do what we normally do. And just do like you know, that's 90 degrees, bring it down, and then just transfer it to your page. So it gives you a general idea really of where this fence line is kind of going to go. It gets smaller, doesn't it, as it goes up? Yeah. So it might just help place where things are going to go. This comes a bit high, but I will just end up going over this to start with, because things like the fence are quite dark, so it will cover really well. I'm just popping a few bits in, and you know, if you feel you need to pop it in, pop in some of the fence panels. But as I said, I'm just going to go straight behind this anyway. So because I want to get this colour, these colours that are in the shadow behind. So when you start to really unpick it, and this is what I loved about this one, is that although it looks very simplistic, there's all sorts of tones in there. So if I start to look here, down here, there's kind of quite like a darkish kind of almost a bit Payne's grey, where that really kind of big dip of the snow is. And that's what we'd expect, because it's cool in the shadow, where we get where we get big kind of like shifts of snow and drifts. And then some of the other shady areas feel a little bit more blue, you know, so they're all a little bit different. Or you might even some people put violet in to some of these. So what we're going to do is experiment with our paint and look at it. But I'm going to do this bit second anyway, and actually look at doing the sky. And as I said, You know, I'm going to pop, because these trees are very dark, we can put those in over the top last. So I'm not worrying at all about that. But I am going to make sure I get all of this in. So it's thinking about, again, about tone. So I'm going to mix it just with an ordinary brush and start to think about some colours that I'm going to put in. And again, the testing of this is really helpful because I'm not quite sure what we're going to get. So I'm going to go in with some orangey colours, which is what I did this morning. But I'm going in with kind of a warmish orangey colour. So I've got some cadmium yellow, which is the warm one. If you haven't got cadmium yellow and you've only got lemon yellow, that's fine. Use the lemon yellow, and you can just put more of a warm kind of a red in there. Now, obviously, that's going to be too strong. So the thing with the watercolour to remember is, certainly with this, I've squeezed a little bit out from tubes, and I've got the tiniest amount that I've squeezed out. If you've got a pan where the little cubes are, then you might need to kind of swish it around a little bit more till you get what you need on your brush. But they're so heavily pigmented when they come out the tubes that sometimes the mistake I suppose we make most with them is we don't water them down enough. So if I do that now, that's going to be far too bright for what I want in the sky. Although I did say I want to put a bit in, I don't want to put that much in. So I'm going to take off a little bit actually with a bit of a tissue because it's too much mixed. It soaks up nice and easy. And I'm going to go in with a bit more yellow. A bit more orange in there. And again, I'm going to water that down and see what that feels like. We can always add more water. Okay, I'll get in there a bit now. That feels nice. It's quite yellow. I'm going to add a little bit more reddy colour in there. I'm almost back to where I was before, except I want more water. And it should be slightly more yellow than before. So it's getting there. Maybe I can add a bit more. And it's trial and error. Once you've got a colour that you really like, a couple of colours that you really like, I'm going to add more water still. Okay. Then you can mix up plenty of it. Well, I'm going to drop in a little bit of yellow into this one and have a couple of colours on the go at the same time. And this is the bit, as I said, we don't always know exactly what colours we want. Now, the only thing that might be a problem is I'm going to go in and put some water down on the paper to start with, which I don't do a lot, but I do it with wash it, like night where you want to get a sky that's kind of like all blended together. You've just got to be careful if you're wanting to drop wet colours in at another side and they are cooler, so you've got, say, yellows and blues in the sky, which we know we have. Just make sure where they join, it's not very thick. You know, you haven't got lots of water on there because you'll get this, or you're really mixing it like over mixing it like that because you'll end up with green sky because it was going to happen, isn't it? Blue, watery yellow, or watery orange is going to make this green sky. So that's what you've just got to be careful of. And it's almost a question of trying to get things maybe just to meet or let one dry so it's almost dry, you know, and then just popping the other one in. But it's just trial and error. So watercolour doesn't always behave in the same way. We can put controls in, which is what we're going to do to make it more successful. But even then, sometimes it goes its own way. And actually, that's why a lot of people really like it because it is a bit unpredictable. So I've got just these two colours I'm going to use in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to wet, I've got a nice big flat brush here, and I'm going to wet the paper. I'm not going to soak it. So what I don't want is an absolutely soaking wet piece of paper because it will just kind of splay out. I just want a nice kind of damp, it just feels damp, not waterlogged. And what that does, it just kind of sets up a nice, so where I can kind of start to drop in. And I'm going to take, just a bit more water in that. I'm going to take some of this paint we've mixed here. And I'm going to start to kind of move this across my page like this. If it's damp, it'll move really easily. And it'll be picking up a little bit of wetness on the screen, but that's fine. And I'm working fairly quickly so that it doesn't dry. Depends where you are. If you're in a really warm place, it's going to dry a bit quicker. Now I am dropping now. So I've gone in now and I'm actually starting to drop in a bit of this yellowy colour, just in a couple of places. And this is what I was saying about watercolour. It needn't, you can take a colour and change it. So I am going to go in now, just add a bit more pigment, just a bit more pigment in there to this dark one. I'm just going to drop it in, just in some corners a bit. Just so it's giving a little bit of, just slightly different. Because it's already wet, I can drop that in, and it's a similar tone, it's an orangey tone, dropping it into there. If it was blue, I wouldn't be doing that because it would all kind of mix in, but I just want just a little slight bit of difference in there. And then whilst it's still wet, I'm going to take this yellow that I've got on here and just make it even brighter. And just have a little explore, dropping a little bit of that does to my sky. So now I've moved on to a slightly different brush. It's a round brush, this one. Just want to kind of get a few colours dropped in. Not everywhere, that's what I'm trying to do. I've just got a couple of areas. If you drop anything in that you don't want, if you say drop something you don't want it in there, then whilst it's so damp, just get a bit of kitchen roll. Whilst it's damp, and you can just literally just like lift it off and then kind of go back, carry on, go back over it again. I'll just do it there. So, you know, that's how you get your white back, basically, if you're not wanting that. We do, you know, it's easy to do, but you've got to do it, lift it out whilst it's damp, otherwise it's quite difficult. So I'm like looking towards the horizon, it feels, you know, it might be a little bit brighter. I might just take a little bit of that out. Down there, maybe not too much, but just a little bit. So there's lots of things we can do like that. And, you know, if you've got any kind of lighter patches, as I said, you want to pull out, you can. But I'm quite liking this kind of quite orangey sky at the moment. But of course, you can go much lighter than that and not put that in. That's absolutely fine. So reach a point where you can't keep dropping stuff in because it'll just start kind of not working in the way that you want it to. But again, that's just keep exploring it until that happens, and then we learn so much more from that. So I'm just like looking at what layer comes, you know, what each layer, what comes on top of each other. So obviously this one's fairly straightforward because in terms of the sky and things behind, because we've got this lovely area where we're applying this wash to. this one, the wash is coming behind it, so you've almost got to pop that in behind and put the trees kind of over the top of that. Here we've got the wash behind, and most of that wash, so it won't feel too patchy because there's only this bit that joins a little bit where it's more peachy, but it'll be covered by those trees as well, so it shouldn't end up with any kind of lines. And then here there's some washes, and you can just drop some of those beautiful clouds in over the top. And here is still quite washy. So, it's quite pastely, isn't it, there? So we're thinning those colours down nicely until we need to pop another colour in. So contrast is another thing that's quite personal. So with watercolour, we still need a contrast between lights and other colours, or blue or brights and lights or whatever. There still needs to be some contrast. Sometimes people will say, oh, it feels too washy, I can't get it doesn't feel like there's any structure to it. So don't be frightened of going in and putting in some contrast, some darker colours amongst those. The question I think you'll do yourself is thinking, well, what does that feel like in terms of how bright do I want to go? How dark do I want to go with the contrast in it? So what I'm just going to do here is going to pop in a kind of a yellowy orange on the at the top of this hill, just so that, because we need to really get the light colours in, so that we don't miss out. But I also want to make sure I've got kind of this got a light section coming out. I don't want to ignore this bright bit here underneath it. So I'm just popping a few bits in so that we keep some of these lighter areas in there. And I'm going to let those dry a little bit. So we're going light to dark. So we're putting in anything. Now it doesn't have to be just yellow. That's the colour I've gone at the top, but I'm going to make it lighter as I come forward here where it's really shining on it. Sometimes a pop of bright works actually really nicely. We don't think it does in watercolour, but it does. So don't be frightened to explore that. And then I'm going to get lighter here. Maybe going with just a bit of a peachy colour. Just make sure they're in. Because it's fine to lift it out. If you wanted to just put the glue in and lift it out, it's fine to do that if you can remember to do it. So you can try it this way. And if you find this a bit tricky, then, by all means, just try and lift it out. Now, so then I'm going really pale with some of these bits that sort of feel to me like they are really pale. This one here feels a bit brighter underneath the tree. So what we have to do is, if you're thinking about snow, look at what's white and look at your white paper and then compare it and think, oh, well, is it white or is it not white? That's the trickiest bit. And I'm looking at this thinking, it still doesn't feel completely white to me. So I'm going to go in with just yellow on its own, and I'm really even try the lemon yellow this time. Let's have a look. Because that's a bit more acidic. And I might thin that down hugely. So that it's really, really thin. Now you can actually mix, and mix a bit of this orangey in it as well. You can mix a really light colour and you can make it more pastely with white if you want, but you can just thin things down just by adding water to them as well. So that's something to explore. I'm looking at this front section here. Just kind of like, you can pop the water down first if you want to, or you can just go in and just pop these lovely kind of like undulating movements in there. And you don't always have to do colour the whole thing in as well. You can leave little bits as well if you want to. Just remembering to do it. So I'm looking at this one here. This is really light. You can probably just see the reflection on the camera, but I'm just going to add a tiny bit to this very light colour of just orange. So we get just a tiny bit of glow, or pink, or whatever colour you're seeing. Really thin. So we're just experimenting with all the colours that we can see in there. That feels a bit pinky to me. I'll try a tiny bit, adding a tiny bit of pink to that little yellowy colour. So it's a bit peachy pink. See what happens. I'll use a little tiny bit of rose. See that on its own. But I've done it with the peach because it feels like it's crossing over between the two to me. So that's what I'm going in with. You can only go in with what you're feeling that you can feel, and what the colours are feeling like. And they're very, very light on there. Of course, you can go in with a bright if you think that's what you're seeing. I might just put a little bit of a slightly brighter one up here and see. We're just kind of working out what all these patches are and working light to darkest. So then it's like, well, where am I going next with that? So I've got to kind of have a look at what else in each patch is coming around it as well. And also where you want to go next. So I could go and put this line in, but I'm just going to hang on a little. In fact, I might actually, because if this is drying quite quickly now, because if I'm not careful, it'll just go, if it's very wet. So again, it's learning like just to time it a little bit, and you don't know that till you're doing it. So I'm going in with this dark brown now. This is a burnt umber down here. Some areas of these trees are highlighted up here, and I'm looking really close. They are slightly lighter. So I may go in with like a burnt sienna, which is a warmy, reddy one, or I might even pop a dot of pink in. We'll see. I'll just test them out and see. That's nice and dark. That will help me like that. And again, for some people, that's going to be too dark. If you're doing it and you think, oh, I don't like that really dark colour on the watercolour, then go in with a thinner one with less water in. You see that better now. It's a bit wax, it's difficult to see. So yeah, that's the other thing you can do if it's too dark. So I'm going to mix up plenty of this because I'm happy with it being really dark. So I'm going to go in. I quite like a strong contrast, but as I said, if you don't, then you don't have to do that. You can go in much more watery. But then I'm going to get this other lighter colour ready for over here and drop that into the trees first. So I'm going to go for some, going in for a bit of burnt sienna there, which is the warm brown. And I think that's going to work nicely with my sky. It's orangey. And I might even just try dropping a tiny bit of this rose into it, just so it gives it a bit of a pop. Okay. We can explore these. So, I'm looking at the top here, and we get the lightest ones in first. This is where I want to capture these ones that I feel like this, we're just getting the tops of the trees in the light here. I'm just going to pop those in. And I'm just pushing the brush up really, just to give a sense that there are trees there. It looks a bit strange, I know, on its own. I'll start to add these really dark ones here. And then start to get these dark ones in. So obviously I've got this here. So this is what we've got to be careful of, is to make sure that it's not going to run into the bottom, which it started to do. So I might start over this side and just leave this. I'm just going to take that out. So again, we can take things out. Just put that on, thankfully. And start over the other side. Just see a little bit of tree poking out there. A bit coming in here. So right in the background, when you can't see much, you know, we wouldn't expect to put much detail in there because we want that to kind of keep going backwards, basically. This tree is going to cover it anyway. I do want to make a clearish line there so that we're keeping the tops of this lovely lit bank here nice and solid. So that the light of that is going to be catching across there. I mean, you can put all of those very light ones in if you want to. I'm just going to let that bit dry. But each section, I'd say you want to work light to dark. We're just building it up. It's quite a process, but it's lovely. Just really enjoying, you know, it's a great, enjoyable one where you can just push the paint around with your tip. So there's a lot of kind of pushing of paint. So like this round brush, literally just, you know, just push it around so that some bits are darker, some bits are lighter. And though even in those sections, and it can make it feel a bit more like trees then as well when that happens. Tend to get the shadowy at the bottom, so you can pop a bit of that back as well. So it's just a suggestion of the trees being there. There's a couple of bush marks pushed at the top. We don't want masses of detail in that back, where that back row of trees is anywhere, because we don't want it to pop forwards. Anything we put too much detail in will pop forwards a little bit. So it's just being mindful of that as well. Again, you know, just deciding how thick you make this particular bit of paint. Now, I know the top's okay now because it's not spreading right into all that orange, which is the bit I would have been concerned about there. So you've almost got to leave enough time to let that dry enough. Sometimes you want to kind of mix some colours together in it and you like let it run, but it's just deciding. And there isn't a formula to it because it's completely dependent on your temperature in your own home or workspace and how you know, and how fast drying your paints are, how much water you put in. So it's just one of those, like, getting to know your set is the most important thing, I think, really. I'm just making my way across. Still. And you can go much faster than I'm going, by the way. If you feel like you want to move along, then by all means, you know, go for it. I'm just going in quite tentatively, pushing this around, quite enjoying it. It's like anything, sometimes you feel like going a bit faster and sometimes you don't. I'm enjoying the process of moving that water around, that's the main thing. So I'm still going in with this amount of brown that I've mixed. And, you know, some of it's a bit heavier, and I've left it to sit on the surface in some places, and then so that you're getting, it feels a bit more like a block of trees because you've got slight different colours in slight different, you know, areas of build-up of shadow. So that's quite nice. Just what I'm doing is neatening off the base, the line at the base. So that we have a nice clear, because when we get this like all that lovely snow at the top, it is quite a clear area. And I'm just going to let that dry before I try and put any of those on there. But then I might, what I'll do is come down, you know, to some of these areas around here and just work it and look at all of these lovely blues. And I'll try and mix some of these lovely blues up now as well. And also, I'll probably pop, before I put the blues, and make sure I've got all of the light colours in that I wanted to get in there. But we'll just take a little pause at that point, see how everyone's getting on. So we're just continuing to work through, just thinking about some chairs, um, thinking of some colours that we can use for this for the shadow on the snow. So there's all sorts of different ones. I'm going in with the kind of more blue based kind of shadows. So you can try all sorts of different blues. So, you know, just remind yourself what the phthalo blue is, which is a kind of more like a deeper kind of a colour. So you can use that completely on its own if you want to have a pop of shadow, like a more of a bright in there. You can use it on it like watered down. Or you can use a phthalo. You can't see that, I'll move it over. So that was like muted down. You can also use phthalo with a little bit of Payne's grey. I mean, Payne's grey on its own gives you much more of a kind of a bluey grey, because that's what it is effectively. If you haven't got Payne's grey, you can, same again, you can try a bit of blue with the tiniest bit of black. That'll give you kind of a Payne's grey. Or you can use the Payne's grey on its own. So, or, let's have a little look. That one's Payne's grey and the phthalo blue, watered down, which I quite like. And then you can try, so then there's ultramarine blue. That gives you more of a pop of colour, but you can, again, you can water that right down so it's got, so that's ultramarine. So you can see the difference, it's kind of like much more bluey, sky blue. And again, you can try a bit of Payne's grey and a bit of ultramarine. So there's so many combinations for shadows. And again, you know, you can use that more watered down or a bit more thickly. So we've got now 4 shades there, 5 shades of blues. And then you can even try with a bit of purple, you know, a bit of violet colour or a bit of purple. I'm just trying to think, have I actually got some? I'm not sure I have. So if I haven't got, so if you've not got a violet in there, I think I have in my other kit actually. You could always put a bit of red and a bit of blue together to get a purpley colour. I will try and find my other one there. Where it is. So not all sets, but like this particular one doesn't, but then have another one. So I'm not going to go in with a warm purple. I'm going to go in with a violet, which is more blue based. Tiniest bit out of these tubes. So again, I've got some violet there. Now you can use your violet and the tiniest bit of Payne's grey. That gives you a different shadow. And again, you can add more water to that and see. Some of these are slightly different colours, aren't they? Some are darker, some feel a bit brighter because they're nearer something else, some feel a bit less. We've got all these things going on. It's really interesting. And then you could just use a bit of violet and one of the blues, say, your phthalo blue. So you can mix them with different things and then, just decide which colours you want to kind of pop in there. So I'm going to go for, I think, let's see, I'm quite favouring a bit of Payne's grey for the very darkest, but I'll leave that till last. Quite like this one with the violet in, and I quite like this one here that I mixed earlier that's got very watered down phthalo in it on its own. I'm going to go in with that one next and use it kind of where there's a few more pops. I feel like at the back here where the light's catching, some of those that are in the shadowy bits are slightly brighter, so that's what I'm going to go in with here. But we're just lucky we can just mix them and try them. It's just really nice, isn't it? I think behind it's really quite dark. Whereas sometimes where it's a bit, highlighted, I feel like we sometimes get these more pops of colour, but it's just really, there isn't a real right or wrong here. It's really down to having a think and having a little play really with the colours and the tones. I am just going to get that light colour in the top there though, because I'd forgotten about that one. Put a little bit more, slightly vivid of that over the top. Right. Just get those in. So I've gone in with a bright here, bright yellow. Sometimes it can give the illusion of that glow without actually putting white in. I've done a little bit of white on the top. That's kind of coming behind. I might pop a little pop of that in here now. I'm quite liking the effect that's given me because it's drawing my eye to where it's well lit. Okay. So, this is where as we go, we can just try these things out and see what happens. And again, I may bring just a pop of brightness back to here as well. Just where you're getting this real bit of colour. And then we just can kind of now like go through and like look at these other, once you've got all of your light colours in that you want in place, just kind of now starting to weave these other colours in. So I'm going to go in, I think my next colour is going to be a bit of a lilac-y one, because I'm really enjoying that colour. And this is what I said, you can mix up all these different colours just with a few combinations and see which it is that you like. I think that's got that one is slightly darker than that one. So I'm going with this one. I think it's got a little bit of I think it's got a little bit of flower in it. I mix up, plenty of what I actually need because that's part of the thing. I'm going to just test it again. Make sure I've got the right colour that I wanted. It's a little bit too. Just put the times to make things going. That's more. So that's not going to be my darkest one, but I'm going to go with Payne's Grey as a dark. So I've only chosen 3 of those tones to work with. So again, you can decide whether you wet your paper first or not. You start dropping colours in and everything as well as you go. It doesn't matter too much if you've got kind of lots of the same hue. So if we've got like blues and violets, they're not going to be too, it's not going to matter too much if they mix a little bit because they're the same tones anyway. You might actually quite want those to do that. Just going to pull a little bit of that colour out there in the middle. So that's another thing to explore is actually deliberately making some of those mix together. Yeah, it's a great opportunity just to really kind of explore all the different tones and colours that you get in. And the way the landscape kind of moves is just fascinating anyway. Now, whilst you're doing this is where the salt comes in. You might want to just try and have a little explore with creating a little bit of texture in there in the snow. And you can literally at this point, where you see any kind of textured areas, you do get that, don't you, in the snowdrift and everything, you just drop on some either salt in little patches. You don't have to drop it everywhere, but just particularly where you want it um to be more textured. You know, it might show up more at the top, for example, of each snowdrift or something. Just sprinkle it on. I may have left it a little bit late, but we'll see. Really should do it as soon as you've done it. And then it'll pick up once at the end, you know, really ideally could do with leaving it on all evening, but you can take it off at the end of the session and then see what happens, because it does like soak up a little bit of the colour and pull it around, really. It pulls it around into it. So it's quite interesting that you get these kind of textures that you might do in the snow. So that's something to try if you fancy that. We've not done that before. Quite interesting. So this one's quite cool. You can put some all over this. Big stretch of similar colour for the top. Oops, too bright. You know, and then you can go to your darker areas if there's anywhere that you think needs a little bit darker. And you can start to drop those in, can't you? Little, you know, tufts of things that we can't quite see, but we know that there's maybe a bit of foliage underneath or something like that. I'm just using this the edge of my brush, but you can, you know, you can just use the top of it to kind of create a few tufts of foliage coming up if you want to show that there's almost a bit of something poking out just with the tip of the brush, or you know, it's finding your own brush stroke to represent like the trees, or you know, finding a way of doing that. So we can look at the balance across the painting. I'm just going to go back in just in the middle bit here a little, because I feel like I've dropped this colour in down here and it's not it's just kind of a little bit patchy, so I'm just going to add another colour, but I'm careful not to let it all kind of go green because I've got blue around it. and see if there's anyone else who wants to add this. Looks like. Anywhere else, as I said, that you want to darken off? It feels much more, much darker than another area. Right. I'm going to think about what goes underneath this tree again, and look at the patches of colour here in the shade. We're just making these observations the whole time we're doing these, which is nice. It's much darker under here in certain areas. If you're not sure how dark to go, just go darker, and you can always darken it later anyway, because it's going to be underneath the trees. I'm just having a little bit more of a lighter blue in here. So I'm going to take a little bit out because I've not managed to leave that. So I want to take a little bit of tissue, just roll it up. I'm just going to take just a little bit out here to create the feeling there's a bit of light there. So when you've got, where you feel like you want to be, leave it. If you're not sure and you think, actually, do I need to shall I put less on or more on or whatever, just have a little breather from it. And then have a think about the other things you want to put in. So whether it's the fence or whatever, if it's dry enough, and then think about the colours on your tree, what kind of colours you want to go in. Because we can bring our pen in a little while anyway, which is great. And do a little bit of sketching over the top if you want to. So this isn't, remember what I said at the beginning. It's not you don't actually have to, but I'm going to mix up some burnt umber again for some of these darker areas of this tree. And again, how thick do you go on? Do you want to go thick or not? Some of those branches in there are really dark, aren't they? Between it. If you haven't got a darker colour, you could mix a bit of Payne's grey or something. Just decide what colour you want to do, and also how thin you want to go on with it. Use a nice thin brush. I'm just going to use my normal, like a nice thin round one, probably this one through the trunk, and then some little finer one to do it. But you can use a rigger brush if you've got one of those, a long thin one, if you want to do those tree marks for these kind of branches or not, And then I'm going to bring in some other of these kind of brighter colours in there when I've got these around, because it's quite a lot of pigment in that. So if I go with a nice bright red or something, that will work as well. So I'm going with the tree. So as I'm doing it, I'm just working out, how much is this going to splay out, look behind it into there. And at the moment, it is quite a bit. So I may have to just let that dry a bit more underneath. Although I'm not too worried because it's quite dark and there's a lot of trees in there. There's a lot of branches. And I'll leave it to dry just a little bit more. But you can get quite nice effects with letting it run like that if you want, if you like that real loose effect. A lot of people do. What I might do is just pop some of this fencing. So I'm just going to go in with a Payne's grey and a bit of brown for the actual fence post. But you can do this by sketching it in. So I'm looking at where I popped it originally. These are quite cool, actually, isn't it? People have made the trees a little bit higher too, which is making them hmm, something like that. I wouldn't have even attempted that if it had been a very like light colour behind it. I would have just left it, but I thought we'd have a try. And this is what I was saying. Sometimes you think you know your paper and it's dry and it's not. The waiting game, unless you've got a hairdryer. People like to get the hairdryer on it. Trying to get there. So when it's dry enough to do, just pop in you know what you need to pop in. And then, so you can go in nice and relaxed with those uh, the fences behind, or you can just, go in quite light, and actually don't have to be really dark. Just as much detail as you want. I'm going to keep mine quite loose because my painting is quite loose. I don't want to tighten it up too much um, with lots of detail in the fencing or it being too precise. Actually, personally, I'm going to just keep it a little bit. Oh, it's certainly a bit wiggly, higgledy-piggledy, is that fence anyway. So, yeah, so I'm going to go in now, finish, just pop some of these tree trunks in because it should be nice and dry. There we go. Just going to go in with some different tones in there and just start layering up these uh, lovely branches. I'm holding the end, my brush really by the end. I'm just going in with this dark brown still, but holding at the end of my brush like that because it makes you just kind of use it very lightly. So if you're going in with a light touch anyway, and you're wanting to not be too precise and keep it a bit more natural, then just holding your brush further away and just using the tip to kind of like create this really much more loose branches is quite nice and enjoyable. So that's something to try. So when we do this, it'll be very kind of more angular, whereas if we hold it at the end, it's really interesting how kind of flicky we can make some of our branches and things just like. And your branch styles, I mean, will be completely, or your tree style, completely down to what's coming out of your hand, and what kinds of effects you can just, by wiggling your brush about, you can get. So it comes with practice as well. The more trees you do paint, the more easier it gets to paint them. So it's great. Just it doesn't matter. Just start anywhere with kind of making some nice marks in there. I'm just going to add in a bit of depth by putting some darker colours into the tree, into the some of these areas just to. And then I'm just going to go in now with some nice fiery. Actually, I'm going to bring some colour in. So again, this is like there's some nice bright colours there. So I would go for something like burnt sienna, but because this has got these lovely warm colours in, that'll be a nice colour. I'm also going to add some actual red in there. I'm going to get to where I want it to go. A bit like I did at the back with the pink, just to kind of like make it pop a little bit. And you can either water it down or you can just bring some of that fiery red colour through. It just adds a little bit of something. I'm going to go and put some red in on its own actually now. And that should be okay because it's got quite a lot of pigment on it as well. It does tend to show up on the to show up there on that area. And then I'm just looking at any little twigs and twiggy areas behind it there. And again, you can leave things out. So if you think, oh, I don't want that twiggy area on, or and leave them, or you can just pop some in with your brush. Just, behind this railings where there's a little bit of a thing, something going on behind there is what I'm trying to pop in. And there's all sorts of lovely little things going on there. So when you get to a point where you think, actually, I'm happy with, where I am, and you've looked across it and you think that's where I want to be, then you can, if you want to, bring your pen into this. So I'm just going to peel this off a little bit so I can see where I am with it as well. With a watercolour paper, just be a bit careful with your tape because it can pull it off. I'm just doing that a bit more slowly. It makes such a difference when you have that little bit of tape on around the outside. I'm also going to shake off my salt. So obviously, the longer I leave it, the more it will make a make, it'll take shape, but I'm not going to do that tonight just because of the timing. So I'm going to find something to shake this salt onto. Make sure that doesn't run too quickly. And it's quite wet on top. Actually leave a bit of that on because it doesn't want to come off and I don't want to push it off because it'll push the paint off. So I'll leave some of that on for now. And then, you can decide whether you want to go in and pop any lines or anything in with your any textures or anything in with your pen. And you can use any colour pen, but a lot of people tend to use black, to be fair, and sometimes people actually use it on areas that are a little bit more textured. So you can just add a little bit. You can also let it run as well. So people really like to do that. It's one of those things that when you start the sketching of it, you don't really know. You won't know what your sketching style is like. So if you're not sure where to go, just go in with a few little bits, maybe a few little bits of foliage or, a little bit of fence or something where you can just start to lay a few marks down and decide, do I want to stop there for now or do I want to continue with it? So I'm going to go in with this foliage at the back and just pop just some extra bits in. And when this is slightly dry, I'm going to go into the tree a little bit as well. I think at the moment, yeah, it's just going to get lost in there because it's very wet. But I can just do a little bit of we're just accentuating it really, just with a few lines or whatever. And you can even do it in the snow, like there's some twigs and things here. I could just add that in there. You won't know until you do it how much you want to do. So as I said, some of these where there's much less going on, like no buildings or walls are great to do it on. You might really just put a minimal amount, a minimal amount on. And just keep it really light. But as I said, you might think, oh, I'm really loving it, what I've got today and what I've done, and the colours. I don't want to put any pen. Again, you don't need to. It's just personal choice. On your sketching style, it might be you have a lot of wiggly lines, dots, or a bit more precise. So that's something that develops with line and wash. It's not something that you do the first time at all. And actually, as you go on, every time you do one, your style evolves a little bit. Almost kind of what I'd say is it gets a bit looser as you go through. It's like anything, isn't it? When you kind of quite happy just to kind of make some marks and not really think about it, that's when that looser bit comes out. So I'm just looking on here what I can do. Just little bits there. So I've got some of these lovely. So you can pop your marks down for whatever it is you want to do, and you can also then just make those. If you want those to become a bit more washy, you can drop a bit of water in and push those out a little bit, or you can keep it with a very precise line. So people that do a lot like to do a lot of things on trees with them. They might just pop a little bit in one side there. As I said, I can't really at the moment. I'm going to bring some out there. But I would probably go in and make a few more marks at the bottom with it, and you can flick that up as well. So you've got this darker colour in or whatever. But it's just trial and error and a little bit. And I'm actually going to stop there because when we've done other things, I do tend to put a little bit more into it, but I'm quite happy just to leave that. I might actually just pop in something a little bit with that on the tree here. So that's all I'm going to leave that. And I think I'll make that my final pause, but I'm going to come back and see how everybody's doing and see if you enjoy it. But it is just a process of building it up. And of course, mine is very small, so it's quicker. Watercolour is much quicker than some of the other mediums as well. So I hope that's been really helpful. So I'll just take my final pause there and hope you enjoyed it.